2,000 years ago, one civilization held the entire Western world in its grasp. From Northern Europe to Africa and the Middle East, it imposed laws, ideas, and a single language. For 2 millennia, we've dreamed of its cities and its triumphs, its idealism and its decadence. Rome, the power and the glory. Over 1,000 years after Rome's fall, the armies of the French Emperor Napoleon descend on the city. Napoleon's forces have already battled their way through Europe. To take Rome seems an afterthought. By this time, it's a backwater. But for Napoleon, it has an almost religious significance. He claims he's the spiritual descendant of the Roman emperors. He has himself painted wearing the Roman crown of laurels, as if Rome still rules the world. His troops march unopposed into the city. It's like walking into a ghost town. They find the frightened Romans huddling among the ruins of the ancient city. Crumbling palaces and arches still seem to echo the magnificent triumphs they were built to celebrate. Goats and cattle graze where thousands once thronged the streets. In 70 AD, when the Emperor Vespasian started building the massive Colosseum, Rome was 10 times larger than the city Napoleon found. Vespasian wanted a great theater for the gory spectacles Romans so loved. The scale of the Roman games, like the scale of Rome itself, was staggering. The Colosseum had seating for 45,000 and standing room for 20,000 more. In one series of games, 5,000 people and 11,000 animals were slaughtered. Nothing in Hollywood could compare with this gruesome splatterfest. The blood and brutality were all too real, and the Romans were addicted to it.
When he saw the blood, rather than turn away, he fixed his eyes on the scene and took in all its frenzy. He revelled in the wickedness of the fighting and grew intoxicated with the bloodshed. When he left the arena, he took with him a sick mind, which left him no peace until he came back again. St. Augustine.
They did get excited watching gladiators kill one another. I'm not denying that. But you know what? So do we.
I think, for example, of the brouhaha over Mike Tyson. Right. What Mike Tyson did when he bit, was it Evander Holyfield's ear? That would have been applauded in the Roman arena. That's great. That's what you're supposed to do. In fact, you're supposed to rip the ear off and march around the arena with it in your mouth. That's what you're supposed to do.
Rome's savagery was matched by its size. When the Colosseum was built, Rome was a city of 1 million people and growing. Not until London of the 19th century would a city approach this size again.
What I think you'd notice if a time traveller went back would be the smell, the noise, the dirt, the crowdedness. I think there'd be lots of beggars, lots of signs of sickness, disease, lots of small children. It'd be rather like Calcutta or Rio, crowded modern town, very poor, with these monumental buildings in the centre expressing the wealth and power of the empire.
Traffic was terrible. Julius Caesar forbade wheeled traffic during the day so people could move around, which meant that at night all these carts started going on these stone streets, and it was so noisy that you couldn't sleep.
To manage the problems of organizing such a huge concentration of people, the Romans invented the science of urban planning. They invented cement, built gigantic public storehouses, and installed citywide sewage systems. But their greatest achievement was the water supply.
The aqueducts of Rome reached 60 and 70 miles into the hills to guarantee a continual flow of fresh water into the city. That flow of fresh water provided enough water, gallons per person per day, that was not equaled by the city of Rome until the 1950s.
Along with millions of gallons of water, Romans consumed a staggering 8,000 tons of grain weekly. Supertankers, each carrying 1,000 tons of grain, crisscrossed the Mediterranean. They were the largest ships built until the Atlantic steamers of the 19th century. The city of Rome was the heart of an empire that stretched from Scotland to Syria. Never has the Western world been better organized or more united. In the year 100 AD, you could travel from Egypt to France on paved roads with only one currency and one passport in your pocket. And this vast, well-organized empire would muster the largest army the world had ever seen. Over 500,000 soldiers. Rome was the superpower of the ancient world. Later superpowers never stopped learning the lessons of its spectacular rise and fall. Napoleon was not alone in his obsession with Rome. 20 years before Napoleon marched into Rome, on the other side of the Atlantic, a group of men were designing a political system for their new country.
In designing the Constitution of these United States of America, we have at various times sought precedent in the history of that ancient republic and endeavored to draw lessons both from its leading ideas and from the tumult and factions which finally brought it low. Thomas Jefferson.
The American founding fathers spent most of their childhood and much of their adulthood reading the Latin classics. To the founders, the past was not something that was dead, it was something that was alive, especially the Roman past. It was alive with personal and social meaning. This was crucial, I think, to the American Revolution because they were doing something really unprecedented in this revolution, and yet they were able to feel that they were not the first. The basis of our political system, I think, lies in Rome.
The Western world grew up in Rome's shadow. Its legends, its laws, its institutions, and its language. Napoleon said, "The story of Rome is the story of the world." It's a story of great commanders and